Well, hello everybody, Jason up, New 80's Revolution, straight into camera, cave. Happy Thursday to you. What says 80s and really 90s like string cheese, huh? Yeah. Now most people would just, take a bite out of it, but if you're an 80s kid, you gotta peel it. Anyway, we're back with episode 2 of Visually Iconic. That's right. The show where we take a look at images of our childhood. Images could mean anything. Logos, TV channels, toys, food, whatever. Whatever our eyes consume can be categorized as a visually iconic image of our past and one that transports us back immediately to childhood in the 1980s. This is going to be the flagship show of the channel for a while. I'm going to do this one a lot. In addition to, some of the other regular stuff on the channel. But, I've been doing this 8 years. And, we gotta have stuff to talk about or else we don't have a channel. So, and I like to do daily. I won't switch to anything but dailies. Or I won't switch to anything other than dailies. So maybe this visually iconic show will keep the channel going. We'll reassess in the new year where the revolution goes from here. But take a look at this. Take a look at this visually iconic image from my childhood right here. Surprised? It's not a toy. It's not the LJN logo. It's not a McDonald's Happy Meal. It's beer, folks. How on earth could beer, Genesee Light, Jenny Light, folks, that's beer. How on earth could beer be a visually iconic image from somebody's childhood? Lots of reasons. So, in New York, in upstate New York, in Rochester, New York, where I have always lived, we have a brewery. We have a brewery that's been around for ages. A century? Maybe? I don't know. Called the Genesee Brewery. And Genesee Brewery has made Genesee beer. So the Genesee Brewery is right on the Genesee River. Okay? There's the name. Genesee Brewery, right on the Genesee River. So we make Genesee beer. And you got to have something catchy in the 1950s or so. And so Genesee beer, the advertising, the gimmick, I guess, the advertising gimmick of the 1950s was that the beer, Genesee beer, was served by a kind of like a pinup girl, and her name was Jenny. So Genesee beer was going to get served to you, and so the character of Genesee beer for a while in the 50s and 60s was a pinup girl model style server, waitress called Jenny. Okay, with a J. But over the years, she faded out, the name stayed in, and Genesee beer is now lovingly known as Jenny. So we have Jenny and we have Jenny Light. And somewhere in the 70s and 80s, we created something called Jenny Cream Ale. And that became very popular. And since then, the brewery has modernized a bit. They're now a facility where you can go eat. There's a gift shop. It's trying to turn itself into a place to be, and trying to play along in the beer market. Genesee Brewery makes a Scotch ale, which is awful. It makes, a couple of flavored Kolsch's, which are good for one beer, and then after that, they're awful. We still make the cream ale. At one point in time, we tried to make a honey brown ale. Not good. Really, the only thing that has survived the test of time is the Jenny and the Jenny Light. I personally prefer the Jenny Light. Now, so big deal, you've got a local brewery. Well, it goes a little bit further back than that for childhood. My grandfather was a pretty consistent beer drinker. And by pretty consistent, I mean daily. Now, I think all my life, somewhere in the back of my mind, I wondered, is my grandfather an alcoholic? And even being in the substance abuse and mental health field, I still don't really know how to identify or define the word alcoholic. It's kind of a weird word that doesn't really have a concrete definition. So, would my grandfather qualify as an alcoholic? Maybe. He would drink beer from the time he got home from work to the time he went to bed. The only difference was he'd get home from work at 5 o'clock and he'd go to bed at 7:30. So he only drank for a couple of hours, but he would drink, beer after beer. And it slowed down as he got older. But I remember, my grandfather's liquid of choice was beer, and it was always Jenny Light. And I can even remember when my grandfather switched from bottles to cans. He would always prefer bottles, and so there'd always be bottles of Jenny Light. In every family photograph, in every Christmas party you see in the background, you see bottles of Jenny Light. And then for whatever reason, he switched to cans. I don't know why, but then you saw cans of Jenny Light. And it became a familiar image. It became visually iconic for me because, it was always in the house. And I lived with my grandparents from, a pretty early age, 12, 13, 14 or so. And, my grandfather still drank beer when I lived with him. So the beer was always a thing. We would go to, Rochester Red Wings AAA baseball games because my grandfather's, he was a transmission guy. He worked at a transmission company, a shop. And that shop sponsored the Red Wings. And so we would get we had our own special box for this transmission company. And Genesee Beer was the biggest sponsor of the Red Wings. So they had the big scoreboard, and it was the Genesee Beer scoreboard. And, it was just, I'm a little kid staring up at, this big beer sign. And I know my grandpa's ordering a beer from the, the vendor. And we had this guy that worked the Red Wings for decades. He was an usher, and he would wear a cone, like a cone head, and they used to carry the big coolers, and he would just walk around and go, Jenny Bear here, Jenny Bear here, and my grandfather would hail him over, and by that time he was probably 9 beers in, so he's tipping him like $40, and Conehead kept coming over to see my grandpa. And then he'd safely drive me home at night, but who cares, you know? So yeah, Jenny beer, Genesee beer was a staple of childhood. So much so that there's many pictures of me as a kid, as a toddler. You know, there's one in particular. If I can find it, I'll show you. I'm just simply walking around holding a can with two hands, and it was a Jenny beer, because at some point in life, it's fun to take pictures of little kids drinking beer. I don't remember if there was beer in the can or not, but I was slurping on it, which is disgusting because my grandfather also smoked cigarettes, and here I am, you know, putting my mouth on a likely empty beer can with the bottom of the beer piss in it with, you know, cigarette. It's gross. And so again, there was a familiarity to the can, to the logo. You know, it's part of childhood. Then I became an adult, and I became of drinking age, and I drank beer with my grandfather, and that was special because when I was young, when I was about 21 or so, around 21, I thought I was cool, and I thought Jenny Light was for losers and for old men. So I drank Coors Light. You know, such a huge difference in watered down light beer. And my grandfather would always make fun of me. That's just water. Well, okay. Well, they're all the same. Jenny Light, Coors Light. But, you know, I would push back, against Grandpa and not drink the Jenny Light. I wanted my Coors Light. And I remember my grandpa would like drink a Coors beer with me, and he'd just be like, oh this is terrible. So come on, it's the damn same. But then something just switched, and I don't know if it was, my grandma getting sick and dying, or I don't know what it was, but there was one point in time where I became almost proud to drink my grandfather's beer, you know, almost proud to drink Jenny Light, and we would drink Jenny Light together. You know, I'd go over his house, I think after my grandma had died. He was still around another year and a half, 2 years after she died. And I'd mow their lawn in the summer, and, you know, he'd make me stop halfway through to take a break. And as I'm taking a break, I'd be sitting in the garage with him, and we'd drink some beers. And, you know, I'm younger and, you know, bigger back then, and, you know, I would drink the first beer in like 20 seconds, and he'd be like, slow down. You know, he'd be all mad at me for, you know, crushing a beer, you know, after mowing the lawn. And then then I just started to really like Jenny beer, and that's all I drink. And then, you know, last March or so, I had to stop drinking beer and stay off of wheat. But I've slowly drank a beer here and there, and I'll just go get a Jenny. You know, I'll go get Jenny Light and I'll drink it. And the taste is, you know, very reminiscent and just it's Jenny beer. You know, it's our local swill. You know, it's not good beer. It's not quality beer. It's like 4.3% alcohol. You can get a 6-pack for, I think, at one point in time, you could get a 6-pack for $4.99. I'm sure the price has gone up a little bit, but you get a 6-pack for $5, and you know, it's a tribute. So, you know, for a while there, I was into, you know, collectibles, and, you know, for Christmas I'd get a Jenny Light poster or a Jenny Light beer tray, or, you know, some other memorabilia. And, you know, every time I got a 6-pack or a case or, you know, a 12-pack or whatever, I'd cut out the box, because they would always have different boxes and different labels and different flavors. And I'd tack them on the wall in the garage. And, you know, I grew up with the stuff, and I drank it for a long while, and I shared them with my grandfather. So Jenny Light, Genesee Beer, the Genesee Brewing Company of Rochester, New York, is a visually iconic image from childhood. We will talk about another one tomorrow. I'm going to go finish this tasty Vista Bay Original Lemonade. Not Jenny Light. We'll see you next time. Good night now.